This is the second video in my Microsoft 365 mini-series. Today I'll take a closer look at the Secure Score dashboard, specifically the identity category. So we'll go behind the scenes to look at Azure Active Directory. And so here's the Secure Score dashboard. It was introduced in 2017 and has gone through quite a few changes. So this is the modern look with the percentage-based scoring. This is a preview of the improvement actions that Microsoft recommends we do. Here's a quick history preview, comparison between our score and the organization. We can drill down into history and the comparisons in this tabs, but today we're going to look at the improvement actions and specifically for the identity category. So the Azure, everything that happens in Azure Active Directory Management Portal. And so let's bring those up to the top. Here we already have a couple of them scored for us. We have 8 points given for not expiring the password. Now that's a default setting by Microsoft. And if you wanted to change it, you would do it in the main admin center under org settings. Now, by the way, worth mentioning here, we have EMS E5, Office 365 E5, Windows 10 E3s. Those are the drivers of the secure score, what's attainable, because there is a max that we can attain based on the licenses we own. EMS E5 contains an AD Premium P2 subscription that gives us some extra points in there, and we'll look at the features that we can enable. But here, let's look at the org settings, and then we'll go into security and privacy and password expiration policy if, for whatever reason, we want to expire it. And then we'll lose points. But Microsoft also recommends to not expire password. They have over 100 million users now who are completely passwordless using Authenticator app or Windows Hello, FIDO2 security key for hybrid identity management. So again, better not to expire the password, but use multi-factor authentication, say in single sign-on instead. 8 points is the maximum we can attain. Most of the 10 is the absolute max. Most of them are scored in a binary fashion. So you enable the feature, you get the maximum allotted. Other ones like the MFA 1-2 features, those are in percentage based. So if you have half of the users with multi-factor authentication enabled, you will get half the points, half the percentage allotted. Designate more than one global admin, that's also enabled. Well, that was created in this tenant. In the demo tenant, we have 4 global admins. For business continuity, of course, is important. If something happens to one, you have the other one to do the work, and then also for oversight, so to monitor each other for risky sign-ins. Here, let's look at the top 5. They're all MFA related. Require MFA for admin roles for all users, enable policy to block legacy authentication. This one's important because legacy protocols like POP3, IMAP, SMTP don't support MFA. Sign-in risk policy and user risk policy, those are conditional access policies that come with AD Premium P2 subscription. That's why we see them here. There is unmanaged apps, enable self-service password, and use limited admin roles. It used to be 5 admin roles max. So now we have more than one global admin, and then also just limited admin roles. Obviously, for obvious reasons, you don't want somebody to get a hold of a global admin account and then have access to everything in your environment. So let's go up to the top and click on here. And then we'll go into manage. And while that's loading, let's go back and take a look here. So this is to address planned. If we plan it, we can then also share to, say, Teams or SharePoint or even ServiceNow. There's a way to integrate that. There's risk accepted. I have one partner that has his customers sign a waiver that if they accept the risk, if they don't enforce MFA, they will accept the risk and not hold the partner responsible. Microsoft states that 99.9% of the attacks are stopped by MFA, so significantly reduces the risk there. Resolved through third party, there are plenty of MFA solutions in the market. Worth mentioning here that Gartner's Magic Quadrant report for last year for access management had Microsoft in the leader category and only number 2 behind Okta. So let's go in here. So we clicked on manage and landed in the conditional access node in Azure Active Directory. You see here baseline policies. Those are the policies that used to exist that Microsoft deprecated recently. Those were a form of conditional access that were available to everyone, irrespective of the subscription that you had, and basically required MFA for risky sign-ins. That feature, again, is not available to regular subscribers. Like if you have an Office 365 and an E3 subscription, that there's no conditional access available for that. With that, you would need either an AD Premium P1 or say Microsoft 365 Business Premium. That one contains, actually, that's a recent addition. It now it now contains an AD Premium P1 subscription. Now let's click on this here. And so it does say that the policy has been deprecated and now you can use security defaults. So security defaults is something that can be used by users, and we'll take a look at them real quick. So if you don't have an AD Premium subscription, you can enable security defaults. Those are actually automatically enabled for new tenants, and they can, for existing tenants, they would be turned on under properties, and then you would just go into manage security defaults and turn it on right here. And then it enforces MFA across the board to all the users and also blocks legacy authentication protocols. Something to consider here is that if for whatever reason you're locked out of the account, cellular network goes down, you won't have access, you won't be able to, get in. And so that could be a major issue. So Microsoft does recommend to create a break glass security group that is excluded or has different authentication methods, and maybe one user who's completely excluded from MFA. And those would be highly privileged accounts treated with absolute stringent security, where no licenses are assigned. You don't use those accounts unless you absolutely have to, right? But again, we wouldn't be able to create that with the security defaults feature enabled. The other way, the way we could do it, again, for subscribers, for tenants that don't have an AD Premium subscription, is here with the multi-factor, enabling multi-factor authentication on a per user basis. And so in that case, we would select the users who will have them on the MFA enabled for them, and we can exclude certain users. And it's easy enough to do, right? You select the users and enable. The issue here, of course, we run into is if you will have to do it manually for every time you add users. So if, say, you doubled in size, then all of a sudden secure score will drop, which at least you know that, hey, there's an issue. Let's go in and turn on MFA for everyone. Again, this is an option for customers that's available if there's no AD Premium subscription. All right, and let me just take a look. And so here you can set up how MFA will be, basically the setup of the MFA itself. I haven't looked at it before too closely, so I'll just keep going. All right, but let's go back to the conditional access policies. Whoops. All right, and we'll go into security. As you can see here, so conditional access where we were before, there's also identity protection. Identity protection is available to us with our P2 subscription, and that will be the risky sign-ins here, number 4 and 5. But first we'll look at the conditional access policies. And so we can create a new policy and we can apply it to all users or exclude users, and I'll just go through the features but won't enable anything. Cloud app actions, cloud apps, you can say all apps. User actions, haven't messed with this one at all. Not entirely certain what that one is about. Conditions, here we see the sign-in risk. This specific feature is only turned on. You will only see it if you have an AD Premium P2 subscription. If you only have a P1, this won't be here at all. But then you can configure it and specify the sign-in risk level at high. Microsoft recommends medium for just the sign-in risk, right? And then you can go through device platforms, whether it's for all or select ones. Locations, if you configured safe locations, you can configure including those. Client apps. Now this one I want to pay particular attention to, because this is where you would configure the legacy application block, Exchange Active Sync clients, right? And so you could create a policy specifically for the legacy block, legacy protocols, and we'll go ahead and do that now. see, I'll say done, cancel. I'll say done. And what I want to avoid, so sign-in risk was not configured. We included this user 0 user. We'll just leave it at that, right? But here we would say grant control and require MFA. And session control, haven't looked at that one very closely. But, and this is in report only mode. It's supposed to not enforce the features, but where you can see how it would affect users if you once you do enforce it, right? So you can look at reports and see what's going on there and maybe make adjustments to the policy accordingly. And again, worth noting here that the under the conditions, the sign-in risk is a nice feature where Microsoft analyzes billions of sign-ins a day, and so then they apply some analytics to it and then decide which ones are considered risky, which ones are not. Again, Gartner estimates that by year 2022, 60% of access management implementations will use some kind of behavior analytics platform. So here Microsoft is already doing it, and let's just hit create. And so here we have our first policy. But let's go back to security and look at identity protection. This is where there's the user risk policy and sign-in risk policy. For user risk policy, you would actually have to the user would have to reset the password. So this is where Microsoft recommends setting the I'll say all users, and Microsoft recommends setting the risk level too high to reduce the number of prompts for the user to where they don't have to reset the password constantly. All right, so allow access, require password change, select. And then we'll go ahead and just enforce the policy, say save. SecureScore reads the changes overnight, but it might take up to 48 hours for it to detect the change, to recognize the change. So now we can look at reports like risky sign-ins. There won't be any data here. Risky users. Yeah, no data here. But let's go. Now, reports are available to everyone, really. It's just the matter of how many, how much data you get and what you can do with it. But if we wanted to look at legacy applications, the way to do it here, we would use, it's already added. There's the client app, and then we can add a filter for client apps. And then filter to, there's legacy authentication clients. There are quite a few options here. There are no sign-ins happening right now for those, but we could just filter. But this is where the admins would monitor the activity and kind of see how the policies are affecting the users. Now we would have to, for the user risk policy that we just created, we do need to register to enable password self-service password reset for all users. So we'll say save. And there is a way to give the users a modern experience where there are two ways of doing it. There's I remember one, but basically users can actually sign up for MFA and self-service password reset at the same time instead of having to do, two similar setups separately. So we would go into manage user feature preview settings. And I saw it somewhere else, and it's already enabled. I enabled it earlier when I played with it. So users can use the combined security information registration experience. You say to all, and again, when users are prompted to register for MFA, they take care of MFA and self-service password reset at the same time, which is a nice feature. All right, so here we've gone over MFA for admins. Again, all users, block legacy authentication, looked at sign-in risk policy, user risk policy. Do not allow users to grant consent to managed applications. I mean, even with managed applications, something can get into your network, like what happened with NotPetya in 2017. That was a fascinating story, but with unmanaged applications, if a user grants consent for the application to access the data, you can lose data, identities can be stolen. So it's better to have some stringent controls in place here as well. So users can consent to accessing company data on their behalf. Yes, we'll say no, but we could give them the option to submit for approval. User can consent accessing, oh, nope, where was it? Users can request admin consent to apps they're unable to consent to. So we could enable that to yes if we wanted to. It will just block them. All right, so that's done. And enable self-service password reset. I mean, we took care of that one already, and limited admin roles. Then I'll look at that one later. We have 4 global admins. Maybe I'll go through and leave 2, but set the other 2 other ones. This will take us actually to the main, just the Office admin portal, not to Azure, even though we can assign roles in Azure as well. But for whatever reason, it just takes me here. And then I could go in and look at the roles. I looked at it before, but here it is again, real quick. There's manage roles. And we could, if say, for example, this person needs maybe some level administrative access, I mean, we can look through what's available and give them an appropriate role, right? And that's basically it. So those are Microsoft's basic recommendations based on a number of factors, but they secure the tenant without impeding productivity greatly. And next time I will look at the application section, which will affect Office 365 and then also cloud app security. So I can't wait for that one myself. I've been wanting to do a deeper dive. If you have any questions or any comments, I would love to hear them. Please let me know.